Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Blake Morgan. I'm your host of the Modern Customer Podcast. Today I'm talking to Aron North, the Chief Marketing Officer of Ultra and Mint Mobile. Aron has been recognized throughout his career for creating compelling and disruptive campaigns. Since launching Mint Mobile, he has led the team growing the brand by over, get this, you guys, 90,000% in its first 5 years. In this episode, we are talking about Mint marketing, fast vertising, and D2C brands and their growth. We also talk about what it's like to work for and with one of the funniest people on the planet and most creative, Ryan Reynolds. I know you'll enjoy this episode. Let's get to it. Aron, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. How's it going over in Huntington Beach today?
Oh, it's beautiful out here. Another perfect day in Southern California. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm also in Southern California. I'm about 70 minutes from you in LA. So yeah, it's really a gorgeous day. I agree. So obviously, everything that you're doing at Mint Mobile, it's really exciting because all the advertising that I've seen very much is focused on the customer. That's what we talk about on this podcast. Customer centricity, but you have had quite a few different experiences working for cool brands like Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. So for our audience that aren't familiar, can you just walk us through the highlight reel of how you came into this super unique role that you're in now?
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief because, it's not all that interesting, but I spent 10 years at various marketing agencies, whether it be consumer promotions, advertising, communication. And then after a decade of, grinding, because there's no better way to explain agency work than that, I decided it was time to do a career shift. And my last stint at agency, I at night went and got my MBA. So there was no real high quality living at that time of my life. I was just working and going to school. But I wanted to put some more balance in my life, so I left and was lucky enough to get a gig at Taco Bell, where I was the director of advertising, and that was phenomenal. Like, what an experience. I was actually joined Taco Bell when they were going through a beef lawsuit, so the business was not in great shape at that exact moment, and we were part of the team that sort of led this big push and turned the brand around and made it really relevant and cool, and that was just a once-in-a-lifetime experience, or what I thought would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And then I was recruited to join Ultra, which is where I'm at now, and Mint had not even been created yet. We created Mint when I got here. So I was able to, look, I did not create it hands down. The brand name was already set. A little bit of the positioning was there, and we knew we wanted it to be a digital brand, but I was able to come in and got really excited with the prospect of what Mint had to offer and sort of grabbed it with two hands. And I mean, the rest isn't really history because we're sort of writing it as we speak, but it's been a wildly fun 6 years growing the brand and getting it to sort of like this, I don't know if we're a household name yet, but we're certainly pushing towards that. And we're seeing a lot of people really excited about what we're doing in the wireless space.
So why is this space so important now? Why is it so important that somebody like a Ryan Reynolds comes in and says, I want to buy this company? What is it about this space that has so much promise?
Well, we got introduced to a bunch of new terms during the pandemic. One of them was essential business. And if you think about communication is the most essential technology, right? And I think only people can't see, I'm holding up a phone. These devices are lifeblood. Like, I have mine turned over right now so I can focus on you, Blake, but nobody is sort of out of hand's reach of their cellular phones. And these devices have become so critical to our daily lives that it is an essential technology. And what was really neat about what Ryan talks about is that because communication is the most essential technology, shouldn't it be accessible to all? Mm-hmm. And right now you've got a marketplace where there are providers who are providing, a great service, but at such a price where it puts pinch on families. And if you've got a family of 4 and you've got to supply them with, smartphones and service, your bill could be well over $1,000 a month. It could be several $100s a month. And Mint is, really aimed at bringing affordability and high quality to the customer. So it's sort of the oxymoron, if you will, of high quality, low price. But what we're doing is really exciting, and we're able to do that because, quite frankly, we rebuilt wireless. We built it without traditional retail. We built it as a digital direct-to-consumer model, and that efficiency in the business plan allows us the opportunity to give, in essence, all that efficiency back to the customer in the form of low price.
All right. So for our audience, can you just break it down? Like, it might be hard for some of our listeners and viewers to just imagine, many of us have the big carriers, the big, I don't know what you call it, the whales. We don't really think too much about their business model. So if you could just break down what is the difference between a D2C model like Mint and these whale companies?
Well, the biggest and most obvious is that we don't own a single store. So many of the big carriers have 8, 9, 10,000 retail locations. And those retail locations are very efficient in absorbing cost. It costs money to build a store. It costs money to run a store, to light a store, to keep a store cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And we don't have any of those costs at all. So with a direct-to-consumer business, or a digitally native business is how I like to call it sometimes, what we're looking for is we're looking to make sure we have the most efficient way to bring the service to the customer. And then we're also looking at ways to create a unique and enhanced experience because it lives in a digital ecosystem. At the risk of getting too nerdy, so I'll keep this very brief, we've really embraced this technology called eSIM. It's an embedded SIM card. So if you've ever gone to the wireless store, you give them your phone. If you've never seen it, they pop out a physical little SIM chip that connects you to the network, and they put a new one in your new phone. We have adopted and really embraced a digital technology that allows you to do that without ever opening the phone. And the sort of parallel or the comparison I use is banking. eSIM is to banking. Well, did I do this wrong? I think I already did this wrong. eSIM is like what Venmo has done to banking, whereas the physical SIM is like an ATM machine, and then going into the store is really, really old school. That's like going into a bank and talking to a teller. So we've really embraced the digital side of the business. There's an inherent efficiency in it that we love, but also because we're digitally native, we've built customer support around a business like that that's really and genuinely supportive to the customer, because if you don't have a store, you think, wow, what do I do if I need help? So we've built this like really, really robust care group that helps people with everything from getting on the phone with you and calling Verizon to get them to give you your phone number, to helping you do things like transfer your photos to your new phone.
Yeah, there's so much dysfunction in these whale companies. Most of us have had the experience of switching carriers. I just moved to LA a year ago, and I didn't have coverage with my prior carrier. And when I switched, I think I spent at least 5 hours in the store with my husband and brother-in-law because about a million things went wrong. And there's just so much dysfunction in how these companies are run. I've seen some of your funny commercials with Ryan Reynolds where he talks about the legal department of these companies. And I just wanted to hear the thought process for the ads that you run and the sort of like counter, I don't want to call it countercultural, but not obvious, counterintuitive content, basically. How do you come up with that? And how do you know if it's resonating?
So we're different from, I'd say we're different from most in the category in that we start with the customer. So we call it outside in thinking. And we really start with what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening to the customer, what's happening to the consumer. And that's really the origination point for where we begin. I will give you the most relevant example is our most recent work. So we came up with an idea in, I think it was like mid-June. And the idea really stemmed off of Verizon announced they were raising prices, AT&T announced they were raising prices. We looked at ourselves and we said, we're not raising prices. Like, our business is very healthy. It's very efficient. We're not getting hit with the same inflationary pressure because our business is built differently. So what can we do? And then this idea of deflation came up. So if they're inflating their price, we'll deflate our price. That idea and that concept was explained in a text message to George and Ryan. And I had a call with George. And George Dewey's the president of Maximum Effort, Ryan's agency. And we work hand in hand on all these programs. Through a quick phone call and a text message, I mean, they're creative geniuses. They got the concept in a second. Next thing you know, we were writing scripts. So we had scripts in 2 or 3 days, and we were shooting on the 4th or 5th day. We moved very quickly here because that message we knew was resonating because there was so much conversation. You could open up any newspaper or any news website today and see an article on inflation every day. We were really at the tip of the spear on that. And our approach was, look, if they're doing this, we're going to do this over here, the exact opposite. And we put it to paper, pen to paper, created some ads and put them out in the marketplace. And we know really quickly if it's working or not. We, of course, put all of our work out in the social media. We don't use word clouds like a lot of big brands do. We actually read the comments.
Oh, okay.
So we're old school. We want to read them, understand them, get a sense for the sentiment and see where it's going. And then we can amplify, or we could tweak if something wasn't landing, but knock on wood, for the most part, the work has really landed well. That we do check by just organic reading of the social commentary. And then, of course, we've got measures in place for broadcast on efficacy and its ability to sort of create interest.
I think it is an interesting concept that when everybody is going right, you go left, because there is a lot of business happening today that is not very kind to a customer that, like you said, is being stretched and is really having to watch every dollar. And it's a really hard time for people. So are you playing into this concept of these whale companies? You know, most people don't like them. No one loves their carrier. And so you're trying to build a relationship with your customer based on respect, on listening, and is it working for you?
Yeah, and this is not new. So our brand has many things that are inherently backwards in a good way to the customer. And let me explain. So I'll give you a very tangible example that is rooted in the product and the product experience, and then I'll give you a more conceptual example. So we sell unlimited data. Mm-hmm. Everybody sells unlimited data. What you don't hear from most wireless providers is that you don't need you don't need unlimited.
Okay.
Right? But there's a misnomer. So either you're like me, who got burned once with an overage on a cell phone bill that was through the roof, or you've only known unlimited. The reality is the average American uses like 7 gigs of cellular data a month. 7. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've built into our product, you buy your initial Mint service from us. After 90 days, we send you an email. And in that email, Blake, we're going to tell you, here's how many minutes you've talked. Here's how many messages you've sent. And here's how much data you've used each month over the last 3 months. If it makes sense for you to move down, right? So we have metered plans or bucketed plans with 4 gig, 10 gig, and 15 gig, which come at a lower cost. If it makes sense for you to move down, we actually recommend it to you in advance. So that way we're a brand that genuinely has your best interest in order here, where we will tell you to pay us less. Mm-hmm. Now, if you could take it, and then if you ever need to upgrade, we will allow you to upgrade, and we only charge you the prorated difference. So it's very consumer friendly. People just don't do that. And that's rooted into the product itself, which that is a huge customer win. I'll give you another example where when the pandemic started, people were very nervous right after the stay-at-home order happened. That was Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2020.
Yeah.
That Friday night, so we got sent home, like I was in my office, just like I am now. We all got sent home, just like everybody. I got home, made sure my family was square and okay, and then I started thinking about all of our customers and how they might be anxious. I called our CEO. We were brainstorming. Within an hour, we had an idea, which was we're going to give everybody free unlimited data who's on our network. Every Mint customer will get it. We brainstormed over the weekend on how to bring that to life fast. We got Ryan involved with the marketing and, of course, the concept itself. Are you on board? Yes, of course, he's on board. By Monday morning, we had announced to every single Mint customer, you have free unlimited data. The way we did it for speed was you could buy more data if you need it, and there was an automatic refund coming to you within 24 hours. So I know this is about the customer experience. That may not be the slickest, right? Where it just automatically comes off your bill. But for us to get it to the customer within one business day was so much more important than them having to have the slickest thing, which may have taken a week to develop, that we went with this approach. But the other thing we did was we emailed the customer and then we put a voicemail on the customer's account. So they got a voicemail from Ryan Reynolds, which said, we know things are sort of crazy right now. We want you to not worry about wireless, so you have free unlimited. And it was very light. It was very fun. You can actually find it on YouTube, the voicemail. But it's just a couple examples of how we are very consumer-centric. And Ryan likes to say, at Mint Mobile, we don't hate you, which is sort of like a personification of that industry that's a little cold to their customers.
Right.
And, I think Southwest Airlines is a really good role model on how to sort of break an industry and insert love back into the equation.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about your customer strategy and your marketing strategy. I can't help but think you're able to do this because you are still somewhat small, you're nimble, you're a little bit of a startup. These companies have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees, and it's just hard. There's so much red tape. Do you think you would be able to continue this strategy even if you had, let's say, 100,000 employees?
I sure hope so. I'll tell you, our company has grown leaps and bounds. We're over 500 employees now. And when I started, I don't even think we had 100. So we've gone through these growing pains, but we talk about our core values as a company. And our core values are really simple. They're action biased, which, is one that you can tell is for a company that moves quick. Another is invent and simplify. The third is embrace the adventure, right? So those three are all centered around what I would consider sort of like the entrepreneurial method, if you will. And then our fourth is ownership. And that's, every employee is a stock options holder, but more important than that, we want people to be proud to put their name on their work. So those core values are really centered around a company that wants to move quick and is okay with, you don't measure 6 times and cut once. You may have to cut and you may have to cut twice. That's okay. Like, we're okay with that. I am a fan of failure. I talk about it a lot here within the marketing department. I believe failure is sort of a synonym for risk. So what I like to do is I like to push the teams to be risk appropriate. Take risk where it's right. So be smart. Well, I always use it in the context of fail. If you're going to fail smart, fail fast, fail cheap, and fail forward, because quite frankly, you haven't failed if you've done that. And our team has really embraced that. And what it's done is it's created an ecosystem where we got people who are taking gambles, and they're good gambles, and I love it. And when they fail, we learn. And when they win, we scale. And that's one of our big unlocks, is that I've created an environment here where people feel genuinely okay to try something and fail, and they don't get punished. They get commended for taking a smart risk. So I think that's really central. And if we had 100,000 employees, I'm sure we'd lose some of that edge, but I'd hope that our management team and our managers of the broader teams are really pushing that ideology of it's okay to go out there and push. That's what we want.
Yeah, and the things you're talking about are exciting, that you encourage your employees to go out and try new things and take risks. And I do think that is what it takes to be a customer-centric company. Otherwise, you're dealing with companies that everybody listening and watching is familiar with, where the contact center agents read scripts and they treat you like a wallet, and that's very normal. But I think to create that culture where employees actually feel comfortable trying something new, I think that is so important. And I think everybody listening and watching can learn from that. Where companies get stuck, I'm sure a lot of people listening and watching, they get stuck on the ROI piece. Well, if we let our agents get off their scripts, if we're not micromanaging, if we invest in the customer experience, where's the ROI? And it's not obvious. Is that something that you have to come up with? Do you talk about ROI very frequently?
ROI, ROAS, CAC, CPS, absolutely. But I'll tell you, you bringing this up, and how do you measure brand?
Right.
Right? It's one of the hardest things to measure. We've instituted systems that give us directional data on the brand, but the brand is ever changing and it's very hard to measure. So for us, what I'm really proud of is that our CEO and the CFO and basically our executive team are very, very tight. And there's a high degree of accountability we put on each other. Our CFO has put a lot and instilled a lot of discipline in why we're looking at these measures and what sort of the bounds within the business are. And to counter that, I've also explained how critical brand is to our long-term story and our long-term development. And we've created this sort of like give and take where we both appreciate what the other is solving for. And we're both constantly working on that solution where, hey, I'm working on this big program that's going to do X. It's going to raise CPC or CAC, but it's good for the brand. And we see down the road easing of that because of this. And you sort of have to have a good relationship and a tight relationship within the financial controls of the company because not everybody can appreciate brand at the same level. So you have to create balance and partnership. That way you can do things that aren't easily measured while still doing things that are heavily measured.
Absolutely. I like that. You are working at a company where you guys believe in something called fast vertising. You've been talking about it throughout the podcast where you get on the phone with the owner of the company, the CEO, and you guys start riffing. You come up with an idea, you throw it out on the internet or on TV 3 or 4 days, maybe not on TV 4 days later, but you're on a very brisk schedule. What is fast vertising, and do you think that everyone else should be doing it too?
Ooh. Well, it's easy. First off, it's not my term. Full credit to Ryan and George and Maximum Effort. This is their term. The way I interpret it is marketing at the speed of culture. It could be a TV spot. We've actually created a spot in one day.
Oh.
So Dave Foley of News Radio reached out to us on Twitter, and I didn't know it was happening. But I got a call from George on his way to a set. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? He's like, I'm on my way to the set. I'm like, cool. What are you guys shooting? He's like, oh, we're going to shoot this mid spot with Dave Foley. I had no clue it was happening. Mm-hmm. So he explained to me what was going on. And I started laughing. I'm like, of course, I'm in. Let's do this. This is great. And like quite literally, the script was written in the car on the way to the set. We shot it and released it that night. So it was the fastest ad I've ever seen done in my life. It was amazing. But it's being able to pick on what's happening in culture and capitalize on that. I think the most famous example they've done was the Peloton example where the wife who got the Peloton gift, they did a remake of the spot or a second version of the spot where she was drinking a cocktail. And it just really struck sort of that like beautiful zeitgeist nerve. But the question, should everybody do it? Ooh. Yeah. My instincts tell me no. Like, just no, because there's so many, look, we aren't a brand who inserts ourselves into social commentary where we don't belong. Right? Like, we understand the sort of limits of where we want to be in conversation. And I think some brands just want to be in every conversation, which I've got to be honest, it starts to water down what you're doing. at least from my perspective. So I don't think it's for everybody. I also think there's some big brands that would not like the risk this adds into your equation by moving quickly. You have to have a growth mindset. A control mindset will kill you if you're trying to move quick, because you, quite frankly, you just can't control everything. It's happening too fast. So I think it's right for big brands, for small brands. That's not the separator. I think what really would set a company apart for this is what is your objective from marketing? What are you trying to solve for? Is there a reason for you to be contextually relevant with what you're saying? Because if it's an evergreen message, maybe you should stick to that. I honestly feel like a lot of brands, this is terrible to say, but like they need to quit copying each other.
Right.
Really resolve to, what are you solving for? Like, what does the customer need? If it's entertainment and you're going to provide entertainment throughout their day, that's great. Then have your brand be part of that. But like, don't do these things simply because thinking all the way back to Old Spice and what they were doing on the web. Like,
Yes.
It seems like they were very much the trigger point for a lot of these immediate conversations, but you got to have a reason to be there.
Absolutely. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to segue into the rapid fire. All right, Aron, well, you have shed so much insight into how you do what you do. I do think part of your secret sauce is that you have Ryan Reynolds, who is so damn funny and creative. So you have that working for you. And obviously you guys are on to some really great things. If you're game, I'd like to do some rapid fire questions for the last part so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. How does that feel?
I'm game.
Okay, perfect.
Game on.
All right, great. All right, first question. What did you eat for breakfast today?
I'm doing intermittent fasting, so I had a cup of black coffee.
Okay. What is your most embarrassing work moment?
These are rapid fire.
Yeah, except for that one.
Gosh, I don't know. I've got sort of like a self-deprecating sense of humor, so I have no shame.
Great.
I will tell you, I get embarrassed quite easily, and when I get embarrassed, I turn blood red, like a strawberry. And of all things, I gave Ryan an award recently. Like, I handed him the award, which was like, how could I ever give him an award? But I did, and he knew I was nervous doing it, and he called it out in front of a live audience. And I turned blood, like super red immediately. And he saw it. And then he was like, oh, look, you can change colors too. So maybe not the most embarrassing, but certainly a big one that was recent.
Yeah, well, he's very honest about how human he is. So I'm sure you guys just had a good laugh. And to be honest, I think we're all kind of jealous that you got that moment that he teased you. We'd all love to be teased. What is the best music or band of all time?
That's a great question. And it's so not fair because I have a big musical genre. I would probably go, gosh, if I had to pick one band that I could only listen to forever, it might be Led Zeppelin. Just like that classic rock, but I'm such a big old hip hop fan. It would be hard to leave out the Roots or, some of those great bands. But I would go with Zeppelin only because I know they've got a 48-minute song, and not many people can do that.
Wow, yeah, that's very long. If you could have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would have lunch with Buffett. I would love to hear him talk live.
You'd have to have a Coca-Cola and a cheeseburger, right? Isn't that his thing?
I would love to have some See's candy with him, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had $1 billion, what would you do with it first?
1 billion?
Yeah.
If I had $1 billion, what would I do first? I'd go on a surfing trip. I'd recreate the endless summer.
Awesome. What is one tool that you used for spiritual or mental growth during COVID?
Meditation.
Awesome. All right, well, we have all the answers that we need from Rapid Fire. It has been so fun interviewing you. I hope you'll come back to tell us about, I'm sure, incredible growth even just next year. So thanks again, Aron.
Absolutely. Yes, and thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic, and yeah, I'd love to come back and tell you about the amazing growth we have.
Yeah, can't wait to see what commercial will pop up on YouTube next. Well, everybody, you've been tuning into the Modern Customer Podcast. Until next time.